In the village of Kijani, everyone knew Madi. She wasn't just a great cook. Her meals were so delicious that people often said her cooking had a little bit of magic in it. No one could make food taste as good as Madi did. She knew exactly how much spice to add, how to make her stews smell amazing, and her soups warm you up from the inside out. Whenever Maddie cooked, laughter and joy filled the air, and everyone in the village felt happy. Maddie was also very kind and always shared her food with others. People loved visiting her small home, where a big cooking pot always bubbled on the stove. Friends and neighbors would bring her fresh vegetables, spices, and meat, knowing that whatever she made with them would taste wonderful. Many men admired Maddie too. Some even asked her to marry them, hoping to spend their lives with such a wonderful cook and person. With so many people wanting her food, Maddie decided to open a small shop in the village. Every morning she would wake up early, gathering fresh ingredients and preparing delicious meals for her customers. The shop was always filled with people chatting and laughing as they enjoyed Maddie's cooking. Everyone was happy and Maddie felt like the luckiest person in the world. One bright morning, as Maddie prepared her famous stew, she felt a sense of excitement. She carefully picked out the finest spices and vegetables, stirred the pot slowly and tasted it as she cooked. Perfect, she thought, smiling. Maddie had cooked this stew so many times that she knew just the right amount of salt to add and how long to let it simmer. When she finished, the aroma filled the shop and she proudly ladled the stew into bowls, eager to share it with her customers. But as the first villagers took their spoons to their mouths, she noticed them wrinkling their noses and exchanging confused looks. Some whispered to each other, some set their bowls down, and others just looked disappointed. Maddie felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Could there be something wrong? She wondered, hurrying to taste the stew herself. To her surprise, it was far too salty. She shook her head in confusion. How could she have made such a mistake? The next day, Maddie was determined to do better. She prepared her ingredients with extra care, tasting each one before adding it to the pot. She was sure that this time, everything was perfect. But again, when she served her stew, her customers looked at her with puzzled expressions. This time, it tasted bland, like it was missing all its usual flavors. Maddie's heart sank. And so each day her cooking problems grew worse. One day her soup was too sour, the next it was bitter. No matter how hard she tried, each dish turned out wrong. She lost sleep, tossing and turning at night, wondering what she was doing wrong. She even tried changing her recipes, but nothing seemed to work. Soon, fewer and fewer people came to her shop. The once cheerful chatter and laughter that filled the room had disappeared, replaced by empty tables and quiet. Her heart ached as she watched people walk by her shop without stopping, and even the men who once admired her kind heart and delicious cooking stopped coming around. Maddie felt like her world had turned upside down. She didn't understand why her food tasted fine while she cooked it, but horrible when served. She felt sad, confused, and utterly alone. One evening, after yet another long and lonely day in her empty shop, Maddie decided to seek help. There was an old woman in the village known for her wisdom. She had a kind heart and had helped many people with their problems over the years. Maddie had heard that she knew things others didn't and often had special ways to solve unusual problems. The next morning, Maddie went to see the old woman. Her heart was heavy as she made her way to the woman's small hut on the edge of the village. The hut was cozy, with herbs and flowers hanging from the ceiling and a gentle fire crackling in the corner. The old woman greeted Maddie with a warm smile and invited her to sit. Maddie explained her problem, telling the woman about how her food had started tasting strange and how her customers had stopped coming. She even described how she checked her ingredients carefully, tasted everything while cooking, and yet it still went wrong. The wise woman listened, nodding thoughtfully as Maddie spoke. Said the old woman finally, her eyes narrowing with thought. It sounds to me like someone may be jealous of you, Maddie. Perhaps they have put a curse on your cooking. Maddie's eyes widened in shock. She had never considered such a thing. "But who would want to do that to me?" she asked softly. "I've always tried to be kind to everyone." The wise woman reached out and patted Maddie's hand. "Sometimes, my dear, jealousy can make people do things they wouldn't normally do. But don't worry. I have a way to help you find out who might have done this." She handed Maddie a small bag of ash and leaned in to whisper a special trick. "When you cook tomorrow," she said, "sprinkle a little of this ash around your cooking pot. If someone has indeed cursed you, their face will appear in the smoke." Maddie thanked the old woman, feeling a glimmer of hope. She held the little bag of ash tightly and headed home, eager yet nervous to uncover the truth. The next morning, Maddie rose early and prepared herself for another day in her shop. She felt nervous but determined as she took the old woman's advice. She sprinkled a thin circle of ash around her cooking pot and then began to make her stew as usual. She chopped the vegetables, added her spices, and stirred the pot with care, watching the steam rise into the air. As the pot bubbled and the stew started to simmer, Maddie saw a strange shadow forming in the smoke. She blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, but the shadow grew clearer and more distinct. To her surprise, it was the face of a woman she recognized from the village, Zola, a young woman who had once been engaged but had lost her fiancé. Maddie's heart sank as she remembered hearing about how Zola's fiancé had left her. He had admired Maddie's cooking and often visited her shop. One day, he had told Zola he wished she could cook as well as Maddie, and shortly after, he had started spending more time at Maddie's shop. Maddie hadn't known Zola was so hurt by this. Now she realized that Zola must have felt jealous and put a curse on her food. Maddie knew what she had to do. She would talk to Zola, but she would approach her with kindness and understanding. She didn't want to be angry. She wanted to make things right. Later that day, Maddie went to Zola's house. She knocked on the door softly, and when Zola opened it, she looked surprised to see Maddie standing there. Maddie could see a flash of guilt in Zola's eyes, and she knew her friend was ashamed of what she had done. "Zola," Maddie said gently, "I know what happened. I know you've been hurt, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to take anything from you, but hurting me won't make things better." Tears filled Zola's eyes as she looked down at the ground. She admitted that she had felt very sad and angry when her fiancé had left. She had felt like she couldn't measure up to Maddie and that her cooking wasn't good enough. She had thought that if she put a small curse on Maddie's food, people would stop talking about how wonderful it was, and she could feel special again. "I'm sorry, Maddie," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I just wanted people to see me as special too." Maddie felt her heart soften. She reached out and hugged Zola, feeling only compassion for her friend. "I forgive you, Zola," she said warmly. "Why don't you come to my shop tomorrow and cook with me? I can show you my special tricks, and together we can make a delicious meal for everyone." Zola looked up, surprised by Maddie's kindness. She nodded, feeling a sense of relief and happiness. The next morning, Zola joined Maddie at the shop. They worked side by side, and Maddie showed Zola all her special secrets. The right way to balance spices, how to taste and adjust as you go, and even how to stir with love and care. Zola listened and watched carefully, learning from Maddie with a grateful heart. Together, they made a wonderful stew, putting kindness and forgiveness into every stir. When they served the stew, everyone in the village came to try it, and they all agreed it was the best Maddie had ever made. The curse was lifted, and Maddie's food was as delicious as it had been before. From that day on, Zola became a wonderful cook in her own right, and she often helped Maddie in the shop. They became close friends, sharing recipes and laughter. The villagers never forgot the story of Maddie and Zola, and they learned a valuable lesson about kindness, forgiveness, and the dangers of jealousy. And so Maddie taught Zola all her tricks to make a delicious meal, and they both lived happily, spreading joy through their food and their friendship. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.